Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I started work on oil plants in West Texas and have heard from one of my coworkers that he believes in witches, and he goes on with a story about when he was in Mexico. He was at a party drinking with folk and they hear a weird sound coming from the woods next to them and they see a lady jumping from tree to tree. I shrug it off, think this dude is crazy, and then realize that everyone, especially Mexicans, not only believe in them, most of them have their own stories about them. They don't like the subject to even be brought up. So I guess I am asking anyone here if they had some experience with a witch. Do they actually exist? If they do, what do they do on their free time? Am I crazy to be curious about this? Do you have any experiences to share? TLDR, a lot of coworkers believe in witches living in Mexico. Are they crazy?
I know what you mean, I've spent a bit of time, not much, but a bit, near some Texas border towns for work. I live in Houston now, but my family's originally from South Carolina. They're basically hillbillies who believe in all sorts of weird paranormal stuff. My mom specifically believes that the devil actually walks down a certain road in her hometown once a year. But the way most Mexicans talk about witches is different. They seem seriously spooked, and when I've talked to them, they tell me very detailed stories of encounters with witches. They seem to be life or death situations. Posting this made me start remembering a few of the stories I heard. Some of these sound kind of funny in hindsight, but the people who told them were dead serious. A bunch of guys working on a rich guy's ranch would regularly see owls with human faces, told to me by a former ranch hand. An old woman whose husband was likely killed by his own sister, a witch. A young man who encountered what looked like a horse with a long neck and an old woman's face out in the middle of nowhere. A guy who went crazy because he kept seeing footprints following him around with no one there, told to me by his brother. There were others too.
There's a story in my family about my grandmother. She beat the shit out of a witch for trying to lure her husband at night. It became an urban legend in our hometown. The story is that the witch kept trying to lure him out at night disguised as a young blonde woman. One day, my grandmother waited for her and beat her ass with a religious candle lamp like the one in the picture. The blonde girl then turned into an old hunched-back old lady with white hair all the way down to her waist. She almost looked like a frog with long white hair and zits and bumps all over. The witch screamed and everyone ran away, including my grandmother, who was yelling for someone to get the shotgun, but then the witch was already gone.
You're not going to believe me, Anon, but my great aunt, or some shit like that, was a bruja. She was caught shape-shifting by her husband, who tried to convince all the neighbors to help him burn her. He was wielding a gun, so the police were called, and when they arrived he was trying to bust into the house to shoot her, so they gunned him down in the front lawn. The tree he died in front of is still there. It is riddled with holes, and is super creepy. She has since died of old age, but she later confessed to my grandma that her husband caught her mid-change from a bird form into human.
I live in Mexico. Everyone has a story about witches. Local community park has old burnt and in ruins house. Not so far from it there's a wooden burnt cross high up on a tree. Legend is, a witch was hanged and burned in that spot. Dad's story. Young dad camping near a waterfall. Decides to go hiking at night with his friends up the river. As they go far up the mountain, they see a ball of fire jumping from tree to tree following them. They get shit scared and run back to their camp. Mom's story. They used to live in a rural town surrounded by trees. At night, they hear mom's baby sister crying. Her cry sounds as if she's going away. They check outside and see a ball of fire where the crying is coming from in the distance. A ball of fire goes into the trees away from the house. They follow the sound of the baby crying. After following it for a while, they found my baby aunt crying on the floor. There's also this advice of keeping scissors under your pillow, to keep witches away from your newborn or something like that, as if it's an actual thing that can happen.
Mexico is a place where this shit is real and a part of life. I can't explain it, but it feels like a parallel reality. Yeah, there are real witches doing real witch shit. Yeah, the devil can be found there. But God is there too. Yeah, curses work, but so do prayers. The sorrow is a deeper sorrow, but the joy is a greater joy. It is a land where there is still mystery, real mystery, where you just have to accept some things beyond our capacity to rationalize. So yeah, there's fucking witches.
La Bruja de Guadalupe. Leonardo Samaniego isn't your typical monster attack victim. Aside from being a police officer, Samaniego didn't encounter the standard ape man or sea serpent. Instead, Samaniego claims he was attacked by a bruja, Spanish for witch. Officer Samaniego was patrolling the streets of Guadalupe, Mexico on January 16, 2004, when he noticed something jump down from a nearby tree. Curious, Samaniego flicked on his brights to get a better look, and saw a woman clad in a black cape, cloak, and pointy hat. This witchy woman had solid black eyes, no moon in there, no eyelids, and most importantly, her feet weren't touching the ground. Without warning, the bruja soared toward the car, landing on the hood and glaring at Samaniego with her soulless eyes. As the terrified officer threw his car in reverse, the witch pounded on the windshield, trying to break through and grab Samaniego. Samaniego radioed for backup, but suddenly hit a wall, knocking himself unconscious. Samaniego awoke inside an ambulance and was tested for drugs and alcohol, both of which turned up negative. He passed all psychological tests, and he'd never had hallucinations before. When reporters arrived, the frightened officer stuck to his story. After his tale went public, hundreds of people reported seeing a woman flying across the sky. Had Samaniego's story sparked mass hysteria? Or did something really attack his cruiser? If you ever visit Guadalupe, maybe you should take a bucket of water for protection.
It is very common to hear footsteps in the ceiling at night. When we look out to know what happened, we don't see a thing. The people here attribute that to witches. An uncle moved out of his hometown, leaving all his stuff behind, because he saw a naked old lady under his bed. He thought it was a witch. My father-in-law once got drunk in the yard. When he was falling asleep, he saw an unknown woman approaching him. When he got up, he had a human bite in his neck. The witch sucked him, or as we call it here in Mexico, La Bruja lo Chupó.
Weird Mexican witch tales say they travel as balls of fire from tree to tree. Steal cattle or children, transformation requires they bury an organ. There's some YouTube videos of supposed sightings or explaining more.
Sorry it took so long to reply. A non-Mexican coworker of mine says he vacationed in Mexico. The place he stayed had a fence on the left and right separating the houses, but no back fence, just concrete and a tree line. He walked to the kitchen and out the window he saw an orange-yellow ball of light kinda bouncing about 5 feet in the air. It went from left to right, one fence to the other. When it got to the fence on the right, it started going back left, and a big black cat came from the tree line where there was no fence and followed it. Looked like a panther. Panther jumped up and hit the orb, and it transformed into a naked lady that walks into the tree line and out of sight. Kinda weird you said that about the orb. A consistent thing I hear between people is they make weird noises, can turn into animals, and if you talk about them they are drawn towards you. I'm going to bump in the hopes that you can share some stories later, bro. Here's a story my dad told me about those balls of fire. Guerrero, Mexico, late 1960s. Dad's a young boy, about 11. He takes care of the cows and goats, takes them into the mountains every day to graze. He hates those mountains because there's a lot of spooky folklore about them and he's seen weird shit up there before. In particular, there's a cave that's supposed to be cursed. One day he takes the goats up. He's pretty high and he can see the cursed cave from where he is. He's looking down on it. Suddenly he feels something. He turns around and sees two orbs that look like fireballs approach from behind and pass overhead. They drop down and fly into the cave. Dad takes the goats and nopes out of there. Dad always took the goats to the same place. It was close to his house and he often saw the cave. He said this happened a few different times. Sometimes he saw one or two fireballs, but other times it was a large group of them. And he always felt them before he saw them.
My family is from a remote village in Mexico called Emiliano, Zapata. I guess sort of recently it's become a semi-popular getaway for pretty wealthy tourists from all over South America and the States, but in the 90s it was basically non-existent. A lot of the area is virtually untouched, believe it or not, but I've only really visited once when I was 12. There's a lake near the area, and it's known for being one of the least polluted bodies of water on Earth. When I visited, my aunt told me about the legend surrounding the lake, and it still sticks with me today because of what I saw. I mentioned to her that I saw a glimpse of a woman on a hike with my family on my way to the village. I legitimately barely saw her, but I remember her hair being so fucking long it stretched literal feet in front of her. She was just standing there like 50 feet from us, slouched over. She wasn't wearing anything. I was too terrified to say anything then, but when I brought it up to my aunt she said that it was basically the Lady of the Lake. The legend goes, when my aunt was about my age then, the really small village lost about 4 people. They just vanished. There was a lot of speculation about where they went. My aunt swore on her life that she saw in the dead of night someone completely limp being dragged deep into the forest. Not sure if any of you give a shit, but allegedly the woman is a pretty famous witch from the area that was killed. There's more, but that's pretty much the summary.
In Chile, the legends of witches are similar. There are a couple of variants, but the main ones are the Tuesday to Tuesday. It is called this way because of the sound it makes. Basically, it is a witch transformed into a large bird. Depending on one's luck, they can attack you, just annoy you or ignore you. You can scare them away by insulting them. Not recommended. You can ask them to leave cordially and even to guide you on the way home if you are lost. There are stories that if you tell them, "Tomorrow I'll wait for you for breakfast or lunch," the witch will arrive demanding what he has proposed. Another would be the Chan Chan. Witches likewise, but these detach their heads from their bodies, grow wings where their ears are, legs with claws and a beak, while maintaining the humanoid face. They suck the blood of the people while they sleep or attack them on the roads at night. They look quite similar to owls in illustrations and folklore.
I had officially turned 16 years old in December and an uncle decided to take me out to celebrate at a party. Typical drunk, sex, and drugs kind of party. Not my thing at all. Told him I wanted to leave. Too drunk to remember we had gotten a ride from a guy that lived in our town and he had left a long time ago. Finally get him off his drunk ass and make him start walking. For anyone who has never been to Mexico at night in the ugly farm countries like that, basically it's all black, pitch black. The stars are the only source of light and they only give a little, and you need to watch your step or else you could fall into a stream, etc. Barely 5 minutes into our 30-minute walk, Uncle says he has to take a piss. This whole route back to my farming town is basically a plain dirt road. And on both sides long corn, wheat, and fields. He's pretty drunk just pissing into the fields. I'm only a couple yards away walking extra slow so he can catch up. Hear him yell at the top of his lungs and say, La Bruja, basically translates to the witch. Don't think twice, I've heard enough Mexican folktale to hear about witches who torture you. La Llorona, which is basically a ghost that cries for her children but has a goat body from the waist down. Start running like hell, not even knowing what's behind or in front, it's too dark to see. Expected my cousin to say it was a joke, but I can hear him crying from behind me. About 1/8 of a mile ahead I could see a light lantern haul ass towards the light. Get there first, my uncle is behind a good 10 seconds. Start banging on the door crying literally. Old folks open up. My uncle doesn't say anything, just basically makes his way in. I quickly follow and close the door behind. Explain to the old folk what happened. My uncle can only to this day describe it as a woman with an ugly face wearing all white like a robe.
So I started hiking on a trail in southern Cali. It's connected to a canyon with haunted legends. A strange murder on a ranch, KKK meetings, and battles between Indians and trappers. There's a car crashed at the bottom of a ridge, but I've never seen it during the day. Pretty spooky, but not too strange. Keep going up, come to a T-junction. Off to the right, there's a little dirt mound to sit on. There's a little stone pile right in front, about 8 stones. Looking at the dead grass behind me, see 2 graves. Graves are little stone piles with crosses made of sticks. Sit there for a while, look at the valley. After a while, a group of Mexicans starts coming down the hill. 5 young adults, carrying dark tumbleweed plants with white flowers. Old lady walking in front of them, fully wrapped except for her face, she has sunglasses and a face bandana. They head down the hill past me. I head down after a while, and catch up to the group. Old lady nowhere to be seen. The group is just meandering, their heads rolling from side to side. Drunk/dehydrated. They're walking fast enough I can't keep pace and take a picture. Eventually they all just stop walking, like they pulled off to the side from me. They don't look at me or talk to me. They don't talk at all, either mumbling or breathing heavily. I walk past them. Never see them again. The whole walk back it sounded like someone was approaching me rapidly, but no one was. It could have just been a one-off weird experience, but what do you think? Should I stop going? Should I bring protection/gear? This trail is also known for unmarked blue trucks driving up/down it.
This happened in Reynosa, Mexico, 2 years ago, summer 2008. For background, my family and I have always experienced ghost sightings, among other things. Sometimes they want to communicate or are in need of help. Sometimes they just want to have fun. I am my family's defense or barrier. If something, ghost, demon, entity, wants to harm them, they have to go through me. I recognized my house and the street as I got higher. The wind is different when you float, it's almost liquid. I was woken up by a laugh, a deep, almost gargling laughter. As I looked through the window, I saw a shadow pass by at an incredible speed. It appeared to belong to a woman. A few days passed. The laughter and the shadow were still fresh in my mind. Suddenly, I remember that on last Sunday, a day prior to laughter, a woman passed by me on my way to the convenience store. Her eyes were glued to me. Middle-aged, short, black hair and with a dark smile on her face. Her clothes reminded me of a curandera, or bruja, witch or old hag. She said something and chuckled as she passed by me. I could not understand a word. While dreaming, Saturday afternoon, the woman entered my room. I was watching the TV, even though only a white glare came from it. She had a rifle and started shooting at me as I got out of bed. When knowing that every shot missed, she ran into my mother's bedroom. Went after her, and as I grabbed her by the neck, the same dark smile appeared on her face. I started punching as hard as possible, but could not make any damage. With incredible strength, gradually she approached my face. Close enough. Her mouth opened and her tongue entered my ear. Disgusted, I released her. I suddenly woke up and saw her running out of my room. I ran, trying to catch her, but with no luck. Both my parents did not see her pass by, which was impossible as the main exit to my house is right by the living room, where both my parents were.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.